So now it's already recording it, Ting Shen, or
I think that. You want to stop recording?
no. I mean, do you want me like make me as co-host and record? I can record on my computer like a backup
All right.
recording. Yeah.
Do you actually realize Zoom has updated? The interface is a bit different.
Yeah, I realized it. Yeah, and I think they changed it like
Right here. I think it's not necessary to share this, but yeah. So hello everyone, welcome to the joint SFPE student chapter events. It's not only open to the student chapters in Asia-Oceania region, but it's an open event for everyone who's already online. We have our first speaker, who is Dr. Ting Shen, a PhD graduate from USTC, China. She's currently a combustion engineer in Midea, China. So without further ado, I'm just gonna hand over the stage to Dr. Shen to share something interesting about herself and her work.
Okay. Can you guys hear me or see me?
yes, we did.
Yep, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Wait, this one. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ting Shen. I'm come from China. Today I'm going to share my current job and the job seeking experience with you. And first, let me introduce my background. From 2015 to 2019, I obtained a bachelor's degree from Shanghai Maritime University with major in safety engineering. And from 2019 to 2024, I studied as a graduate student at University of Science and Technology of China. And my major is in safety engineering with a specialization in fire safety, like premixed flame dynamics and the flame propagation in channels and the flame instabilities. I found I had a great interest in research during my master degree, so that I decided to pursue a PhD. And my main research interest during my PhD are flame shock flame interactions and the induced flame instabilities, which is more commonly known as Richemont-Mascov instability. And during my PhD, I also went to the Concordia University in Canada. As a visiting student, I stayed in the combustion and the energy system research group to further study the supersonic reactive flow and the numerical simulations. And shock flame interaction can significantly enhance the combustion by increasing flame surface area and gas compression. It's a crucial concept in the aerospace engineering. And during these visits, I gained a lot more experience of the real application of my research. Then after my graduation, I'm now currently working at Midea as the engineer in combustion. Midea is a well-known home appliance manufacturer in China. It has been one of the world's top 500 companies for 80 years. And last year, its rank was 278. And before I joined Midea, I thought that this is just a company that sells the microwaves, fridges, and the rice cooker. However, after I joined I realized that Midea makes almost all the home appliances that you can name, from big applications like wash machines to small that like a fire dryer with 56 years of development, Midea has evolved into an international tech leading company which specialized in 5 major businesses, including the smart home and their industry technology and their building technology and the robotic and automation and the digital innovation business. And Midea also values their its R&D development. And over the past 5 years, Midea invested like nearly 60 billion Chinese yuan in R&D, and with 33 R&D centers and 40 major factories in the world. At present, Midea's products and service have served more than 500 million customers in over 20 countries and regions. So I love learning and they're doing research to develop new possibility for current issues. So working in R&D has always been my dream job. So this is why I choose Midea. So now I am currently working in the smart home unit. My responsibilities are to develop domestic stoves and gas water heaters. Our main focus is to improve product performance. One of our ongoing projects is improving the thermal efficiency of the combustion and the heat transfer rate to improve the performance of the household gas stoves. We are also working to reduce the greenhouse gas emission to make more environmental friendly products. I like what I do here, so and I'm looking forward to more challenges. In short, I think it's a company, a good company that to work for. And for suggestions, I don't have so many tips, but if you want to dream job, you should start by looking the job description to see the hard skill requirements, and then you should have a well-written, error-free resume. A good resume sometimes is more important than you can imagine. And after you get the job, you should respect your colleagues. Maybe they are not a PhD master, even they don't have the bachelor degree. The experience they have are much more valuable. And the last, you should be curious and keep studying. After you graduate, I mean, the degree of PhD or master, I think it's like nothing. It's like everything becomes zero. You have to study, and you should associate your job with the majority. Yeah, that's it. And just don't give up, and the opportunities will open the doors for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the presentation, or thanks for the talk. Does anyone have any question for Dr. Ting Shen and for her current job? Actually, this is my first time that I knew that is actually Midea.
Yeah, Midea, I think.
So if there's no more question, yeah, right. If there's no more question for the speaker, we're gonna move to the next. But you are welcome to send message or email directly to her if you have further question.
Okay, bye everyone.
And thanks for coming.
Yeah.
All right. So after a short talk about the industry experience, we're gonna have Dr. Xu Wen, a PhD graduate from USTC, the same university as Dr. Ting Shen, and he's currently associate professor. I guess he's already here. I've actually seen him.
I'm sharing screen.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, I'll mute myself. It's your stage.
Can you see my screen or?
Yes, we can see it. We can hear you.
Okay, no, can start. You can hear me, right? You can also see the screen, right?
Yes, everything's fine.
Okay, good. Okay. My name is Xu Wen. I from the University of Science and Technology of China, but this is the first time I attended the meeting, but I'm not sure what's the topic of the meeting. So I just introduce myself and my research. Because I just joined the USTC less than 1 year, so I introduced myself about my experience in the last years. I got my PhD degree in the Zhejiang University in China, and then I moved. During that time, I moved to London University for a visiting student about 1 year, and after that, I worked at TUDelft in Germany as a von Humboldt Central von Humboldt research fellow for 3 years. After that, I worked in Brussels and Aachen University in Germany for 2 years as a Mercure research fellow. And during that time, I also visited Stanford University for 1 month, and after that, I moved to China as a professor in University of Science and Technology of China. So this is my research experience, and this is my research interest. In the previous years, I was mostly working on the turbulent combustion for different fields. For example, for the solid fuel combustion, for the power core combustion, and biomass combustion, and the metal combustions. For the conventional solid fuel combustion, for example, the power core combustion and biomass combustion, this is
I think you're muted.
Yeah, like your voice is cut off, like offset.
Okay.
No, it's
No, it's fine.
Oh, it's back online.
Okay. At present, I'm mostly working on the hydrogen combustion and ammonia combustion, and the enriched hydrogen and ammonia combustion to reduce the carbon emissions. And I also working on the engine environment combustions for the mostly focus on the ignition, speed injection, and the partial premixed combustion mode. For all of these combustion types, I also focus on the pollutant formations to develop models to predict the pollutant formation. For example, the NOx formation, SOx formation, and the soot formations. When I moved to this is my background for the turbulent combustion modeling, but when I moved to the fire safety, the fire science library in USTC, I also work on the fire safety problems. At present, I also work on the battery fires and hydrogen safety, for example, and also the profiles. I mean the common interest for all of these researches are the turbulent combustion, and so this is a research strategy for all of these research topics, and for firstly, we developed the models for the simplified configurations, and then we apply these models to benchmark flames and the laboratory scale burners, and to validate the numerical models. After that, we apply the developed models to the applications, to the real burners in the industry applications. For example, the core power plants and the fire safety relevant applications, and the IC engines and the gas turbines. And for this different research topics, we use different models and different softwares. For example, for the fundamental researches, we use the direction image simulation software, and for the model verification and validation, we also developed large area simulation and RANS framework to evaluate the numerical models developed in the DNS. Yes, this is my research. This is my brief introduction of my research topics. And if you are interested in the research topics for the low carbon emissions and the fire safeties, I have open positions for the master students and postdoctoral students and visiting scholars. And if you are interested in the programming and the simulation, especially for the numerical reacting flows. Yes, this is my brief introduction.
Thanks, Dr. Xu Wen. And thanks for your advertisement. Does anyone have any question for Dr. Xu Wen and his research or his open position? Otherwise, you can just send him direct email for further communication. And thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing. Sorry. There's one question from Anwar. He asked, do you guys run the open form calculations on your HPC system?
Yes. We developed we mainly developed the numerical models based on the open form software and run simulations on the HPC systems. And for the scannings, for the open form software, we mostly working on the laboratory scale burners, and the computing cost is not so high, so the scaling is fast, but is fast. But for the DNS, we use more computing cost, and the scaling we use a different software, and the scaling is also good. So we use different softwares for different applications. Thank you for question.
I hope that answered your questions, Anwar. Yeah, cool. Okay, so we're gonna welcome our next speaker, Dr. Julian Mendez. Hope I pronounced it right for last name. He's currently a fire safety engineer working in Arup, Sydney, which is one of the biggest and oldest engineering consultancy company in the world. Okay, it's your time, Julian.
Right. Thank you for the kind introduction, Hons Wyn. So I recently completed my PhD the start of this year, where I explored the interaction of different components to the upward flame spread in facades, the role of cavity and the different components of the cavity on the flame spread, finding that the size of the cavity is one of the most relevant parameters there. And since August last year, I joined Arup. I've been a fire engineer in the Sydney office. I prepared more of a presentation based on some recommendations of the organizers, basically on how to find a job or how to develop your career. And how did I find my current job? Through my network. I talked to a colleague who was also starting his PhD, and he had some interest in the industry. I was initially interested in a placement, so I chat around my network, explored options, and that one seemed really appealing. Got an interview with the company, and they found I was a good fit for the team. That then helped in my interview, the previous experience that I had with fire dynamics, and some use of computational tools. Why did I choose this job, or why do I like this job? It's because I have the ability to apply the knowledge that I've gained through my PhD and my previous experience in the built environment, so more of an impact. Maybe the prestige of some of the projects that I get to work on or get to involve on. There is the opportunity to give exposure to previous job that I've developed with colleagues of the industry, get a more direct feedback, and also there is a space in the company to develop research through initiatives in the company. How do I feel about this job? Well, it's been some sort of transition from the academia to consultancy. So there is always the challenge to learn new things and to be involved in new projects, but that's also rewarding once you get to develop a new skill. It's a great place to work. Team is collaborative. There are a lot of interesting projects, and I can say, like, almost if you have any interest, there will be a space for you to develop them. It's also a highly interdisciplinary environment, so you have the opportunity to give your perspective on problems, but also to learn from people from some other fields. So if that's something that you are interested in, I would strongly recommend explore something in the industry, probably in a company like Arup or Arup. As for the recommendations, I remember Ting Shen was just talking about different things that you should do when looking for a job or asking for a job. Maybe use your network, so your supervisors or people you already know, colleagues, people from your cohort who might have contacts in the industry, or if you already have contacts in the industry or the academia, depending on your interest. Talk to colleagues about their jobs. What do they do? What are their roles? What are their responsibilities? Attend to events like this, mingle, maybe to explore or find out about opportunities you didn't even know that existed. Something else is to research the company or organization that you are interested in advance. Say if it's a university or whatever you do. That in the sense that so you can see if it aligns with your interest and with what you want in the future. And that leads me to the next point that I have there, that is defining your interests. Let's see if it's possible to develop them where you work. Align your CV to the opportunity you are applying. It's not the same to apply for a position in the academia to one in the industry. The relevance of the things that you are going to highlight are different, and this takes time, so take the time to prepare them properly. And also ask for mentoring sessions from people around, even people you don't know. They might be willing to help you, to give you 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and then you can also find out of new opportunities. I just wanted to close maybe with what I do on a daily basis. So I support performance-based design for a wide range of projects. Maybe the most relevant or the most critical I'm working on right now, it's on the train line that will communicate the new Western Sydney Airport with the existing Sydney Metro line, and then connect this part of the city with the rest of Sydney. So yeah, it's a huge project. It's challenging. It's multidisciplinary. There's a lot of opportunities to learn and to also see how fire and the research impacts the day-to-day lives of people. I also work on some other kind of projects like data centers, commercial fit-outs, art galleries, among others. So I feel really lucky to be in this job. Yeah. So if you have any questions or any further things to ask me, happy to have a chat right now, or you can contact me at this email or scan this QR, which will take you to my LinkedIn page. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
I have a question for you, Julian. I know you've gone from academia to industry, and I've done the opposite. I guess what's been the biggest challenging thing, and how are you finding working with, I guess in academia, you have freedom to do whatever you like, but within industry, you're constrained by building regulations. So how have you found that?
I think, thank you for your question, Josh. You might have a similar experience transitioning from industry to academia. I think rather than like that was one challenging thing, like being constrained what kind of projects are on demand or what are the priorities on the team, something that you need to adjust. Like, it's not just you and your research and your priorities. It's highly valued that you know how to be a team player and you can collaborate to prioritize maybe things that are not your priority, but are the organization's priority. I think that's one big lesson to learn, or something that helps if you are transitioning. And also that the language that is used is not the same. I think that's something we developed in research when we are trying to communicate ideas to different audiences. But maybe adjusting the language and the style takes a while. It's a learning process, but it's rewarding when you get to develop that skill, and then you also learn how to communicate ideas to different people. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question or you were orienting in another direction.
There's another question in the chat. How do you recommend people do during the mentoring sessions?
I would like ask, look at LinkedIn and look at the profile of someone that you admire or you think their job is good or that you admire, and then ask them about what take them to that, discuss your interests, but listen maybe more than keep talking. Like, I mean, it's an interaction, but maybe ask for opportunities and say what you are interested on. And if the other person is willing to do it, ask them what took them to that path and what would they recommend to strengthen, or based on your profile, what could be your weaknesses or what could be identified as your strengths, to then go to an employer and highlight those and maybe work on your weaknesses. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the talk and thanks for your experience. It's very valuable. for someone who's working in industry, as most of the speakers we have invited are mostly working in academia. So thanks for coming, Julian.
No worries. Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you for the questions.
We're gonna move to the next speaker, Dr. Anwar Orabi, a PhD graduate from Hong Kong PolyU, and currently a lecturer at our University of Queensland. Before he starts, we're gonna start the poll. Can everyone see the poll for Anwar?
Hi everyone, please do this poll real quick. I'm curious to see what you guys think and if it is the same as what I think you think it is. All right, so we have 13 so far, 15. 18, there is 10 more people. Okay, we've got, I think, 2/3 of the people have responded. So out of 19 people, 9 said that they really need to work on the number of published journal papers that they have to improve their chances of getting an academic job. We have 4 that said they think they need to work on their teaching experience, and about 5 that think that they need to improve their communication skills. So it's a number of published papers, communication skills, and then teaching experience, and far last is involvement with industry. That is actually very close to what I had thought you guys would say, and that's why I have prepared today's talk. So as Wenchuan has kindly introduced me, my name is Anwar. I'm a lecturer in fire safety engineering at UQ. I did my PhD at Hong Kong PolyU, one of the organizing. One second, guys. This poll is still stuck on my screen. Okay. One of the organizing SFPE chapters for this event. I was, I think, the secretary or the vice president of the first chapter when Atif launched it a long time ago. So it's really nice to get to talk to you here, and I know where you guys have been, right? I know the kind of thought that you have. I know the kind of pressures you are undergoing. My job here, what I want to do in today's very short talk, is to try and alleviate some of this pressure and increase some of it as well, right? So what you will see is that what you think is perhaps the most important thing might not be true, might not actually be the case, depending on what it is you want to do. So I want to cover 4 things. First, we're going to look at the 3 different job types in academia, the career path that you can take if you're going to work in higher education. After that, we'll look at some pathways that will help you, or some of the ways that you can try to get to your first entry-level academic position. And I'll also tell you a little bit about what universities look for when they're trying to hire for a position, when they're trying to fill a position that is advertised. So when you see a position at, for example, Hong Kong PolyU, there is a reason that position is open, and I'll try to tell you, to the best of my knowledge, what the university is looking for. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about building your portfolio and your skills, and why that matters not only for academia, but also beyond. So the tracks that you can have in academia are actually 3, right? So you can have a teaching-focused role. I know that these are being phased out in Hong Kong. I'm not sure about mainland of China. That you can have a research-focused role. I don't think I've seen those in Hong Kong. And then you have a teaching and research position. So these are your assistant professors, your research assistant professors, RAPs, basically. Your lecturers, that's teaching and research. Research focus will be something that starts with postdoctoral fellow, then you can become a research fellow, or the names are interchangeable. But what many people don't know is that you can have a full career in any one of these tracks. You can advance, at least from an Australian context, you can be a research-focused academic and still advance through the ranks in that particular track. The same as you can go from a lecturer to a senior lecturer to associate professor and professor in a teaching and research track. If you're in a research focused track, you can also become a senior research fellow, and there are also equivalents to the teaching plus research. I'm not so sure what the tracks would be for teaching focus, and I think what they've done recently is they've probably shifted focus a little bit away from teaching focus, just like they had done in Hong Kong. But this is also a very valuable career path that you can take. Now, there is no one pathway, right? So I called it pathways towards your first academic job. And the idea is that it's a complicated road, and you, as long as you're moving, you're going to get somewhere. And I progressed through a certain pathway that might not be the right track for you. You might choose to do something completely different and still get to your goal, right? So there is number of publications is not a magic thing that was like, oh, this guy has 12 publications after their PhD, let's give them a position. It just does not work that way. It is not a binary yes or no. It doesn't matter if you've got 30 publications or if you've got 6 or 4 or 5 publications. It's a whole package thing, as we'll see very soon. So those that are focusing on publications, that's fine. Then that's one of the pathways. And I'm sure, especially in mainland of China and Hong Kong, that's an absolutely essential thing. But also be wary that it is not everything. So don't over-focus on it. Don't hyper-focus on it at the expense of everything else. Now, that being said, you can follow all the advice that I'll give you, that your colleagues will give you, that your mentors will give you, and still fail, right? You might not get the academic position that you applied for. And it's not because you did anything wrong. It's just that's how it works. You can do everything right and still fail in getting the job you want, whether it's in academia or in industry. And that's okay. What's important is not to base your own personal identity on getting that job. That's not healthy, and that's not going to put you on a path for success long term. So I said earlier that there is no magic number of publications that will get you the job you're looking for. So the reason I said that is because when I was doing my PhD, I talked to a career advisor, and he said at that time, you need around 23 papers or 3 papers per year, and you need about 20 papers after 5 years from starting your PhD. That's not necessarily very good advice, to be honest, and it's not necessarily suitable for everyone. And the reason for that is, depending on who the hiring committee is, they might actually look at someone and say, this person has published 20 papers, and 12 of these papers are in very, very, very similar topics. This person is salami slicing. So you take a topic and you start trying to make as many publications out of it, out of one data set, for example. And so they would actually view that negatively. Others might say there is no chance that a PhD candidate starts a PhD and ends up with 12 publications and that every publication is meaningful. So they also might view that negatively. Of course, if you are in Hong Kong or if you are in mainland of China, the angle might be different. Might be, oh, this person only did 12, so they're not productive enough. So it really varies. But at least from my experience, when a selection committee is looking for a candidate, they are looking for someone with a particular set of expertise, right? So they will often say that we're looking for someone with particular expertise, for example, in structural fire engineering, or who is able to teach into the structural program in addition to the fire safety program. So that's actually, they're just telling you what they want. So if you have a completely different background, I would say, don't put all your eggs into that basket and try to get that job as much as possible at the expense of everything else, because it might just not be the right fit for you. And this is the problem with academia, right? You have sparse jobs, right? The job market is sparse. And it's not only a lecturer in civil engineering, it's a lecturer in civil engineering with the area of geotech who focuses on reclamation of waste products from mines. So it's usually very focused, and that's because they need someone with a very particular set of knowledge to complement the rest of the group, because you're joining often an existing school of civil engineering or mechanical engineering, and you're going to be part of the bigger picture. So they'll tell you what they're looking for. So try to find the jobs that match what they're looking for, that match your profile. They might also sometimes need someone with strong teaching portfolio more than someone with a strong research portfolio. Sometimes the other way around. Most of the time, they need someone with both strong teaching and research skills. So again, it varies from position to position. Most important, though, I would say, or one of the most important things is you have strong communication skills. You need to be friendly, then people need to be able to work with you. People need to trust you. So you need to also be able to communicate your research ideas. So my advice for you, and this is because, again, just like you saw in the poll, everyone is hyper-focused on publications, grow your teaching portfolio, okay? So teaching doesn't mean you just coordinate the whole course. You can start organizing, holding and teaching workshops to teach other PhD candidates or other students about the thing you do. For example, we had a professor from CFD earlier, right? So his PhD student can hold a workshop, of course, with his supervisor's blessing on teaching OpenFOAM to their peers, and make it a recurring thing. So this way you can build a teaching portfolio. Give guest lectures. If someone asks you to do a guest lecture, you jump on that and actually do it, because that actually is part of you engaging with students and teaching. Your supervisor actually can use the help. Ask them to help. Tell them, listen, you're teaching this class, let me give the tutorials. And in Hong Kong and in mainland of China, that might not always be an option, but if you ask, they might actually let you do it, even if unofficially, just so you can get that experience. And finally, also ask your advisor, your PhD advisor, that you help with supervising undergraduate and postgraduate projects. Because again, that's part of your teaching, that's part of your student supervision, that will be an important factor in creating a very well-rounded profile. Now, finally is, you might not get your academic job that you want. So don't base your identity on that, and make sure that the skills you're developing are transferable to other areas, not necessarily only to fire safety. So if you're going to be doing anything computational, really learn how to use your computer, learn how to use HPC facilities, and learn how to do numerical modeling. That's very useful in industry. If you're going to, you should also learn to use Python or MATLAB or whatever to create really nice figures. It's all about communication. Then you have to also try and engage with the profession. So there are professional bodies like the SFPE Student Chapters that you're here, actually get engaged with them and host talks and meet people from industry. Make sure that people know you. It's really not about who you know, right? It doesn't matter if you know person X or person Y. That is not so important, especially when it comes to hiring, because if you know them and they're your friend, then they might not be able to even have a say in whether you make it or not, because it's a conflict of interest. It's about who knows you, right? So if you're able to communicate clearly, when you go to conferences, you give really great presentations, you give workshops, then people will know you, and that's how you actually manage to succeed from my point of view. So again, focus on your teaching portfolio, focus on your communication skills. Of course, focus on research, but it's not everything, and it's not the be-all, end-all. I hope you guys found this helpful and found some insight from the poll we did earlier. That's all from me.
Thank you, Anwar. It's full of information and valuable suggestions. We have one question from the chat. Other than communication, what other transferable skills do you recommend for people to develop?
Well, first of all, when we say communication, we also mean like writing. Okay, so be able to write very well, be able to speak very well, be able to use, again, like I said, you're learning, for example, you're now in fire safety engineering. If you're able to run computational models well, you're able to use the command line, for example, very well. You're able to analyze large data sets and take this data and present it nicely. Then you kind of have all the kind of skills that will let you succeed in many kinds of fields, not only fire safety engineering. You know, maybe after your PhD, you hate fire safety engineering. You're like, you know what, I'm going to become a banker in Hong Kong. Well, if you are able to analyze data, if you're able to write code, if you're able to present your ideas clearly and concisely, then that actually might suit you very well, especially then you would have a PhD. So you would have you would tick all the boxes. So it kind of keeps your options open, and it will help you succeed in academia as well. Culturally, Hong Kong is one of the questions was, culturally, Hong Kong and mainland China are very different to Australia. What's been the biggest challenge for you coming to academia in Australia? That's a really good question. Let me think a second, actually. Okay, so one of the things that you would do in Hong Kong and mainland of China that you don't seem to do a lot in Australia is that perhaps it's maybe because of scale, but the scale of projects and the way what do you call it? The authorities work with the engineers. So in Australia, you get to advise the engineer, right? But you don't get to dictate. In Hong Kong, they will give you the final approval. They will tell you, no, go back and run a new CFD simulation, or you've shown that everything works. Great. Now go run a CFD model, go run an FDS and present us the results. They're not going to necessarily look at these results in great detail, but they will tell you pretty much that you can do X without you proving it using this Y method. And so it's a different environment, especially for some reason the word escapes me, especially the way you have to deal with the authorities and get approvals. What was your Luke asked, what was your main area of focus when you landed your first lecturing position? Did you find more focused on teaching versus research initially? Absolutely. So one of the things I really like is teaching. So that kind of is one of the things that I like to do. And when I started my position, we have a program. So I immediately wanted to teach, or I immediately started teaching in the program. Starting to teach a new course for you can be challenging at first, so it takes a lot of time. So at first, it was more focused on teaching, although I will be evaluated on teaching and research. So now I'm learning to find the balance again between teaching and research. But just like I said, this to be like I'm a lecturer, so I am on the very first tier of the academic ladder in a way. So although I feel like I should have done a bit more research, I understand that it's a learning process for me as well. Happy to take more questions, guys.
So if there is no more question in the chat, or you are free to unmute yourself. If there's no more question, we're gonna move to the next speaker. I'll move to the next speaker okay. There's another question. In Hong Kong, we don't have many opportunities to develop our teaching skills. Is that true? Do you really have any suggestions for proving that?
So, so for the people in Hong Kong, if you want to develop your teaching skills, you go to your supervisor, okay? And look, I know all of your supervisors. You go to them and you say, I would like to develop my teaching. I would like to expand my teaching portfolio. Can you please let me hold some tutorials in your class? Can I please help with, for example, holding a particular session or a part of a session? Can I, for example, help in organizing the teaching material and developing the curriculum for the next iteration? I can do the research for you so that you can redevelop the curriculum, which is a very important and really not really often talked about part of teaching, which is curriculum development. So you try and help your advisor, for example, for looking what is missing from your program. So you don't have teaching opportunities handed to you. You have to ask for them. But from my knowledge of the supervisors at Hong Kong, they're so busy. If you tell them, can I take some of your workload? They'll be like, yes. And they will give it to you. It might, you might not be able to teach a whole class, but that's not the idea. The idea is you start small, right? So Nan and I, for example, we had a lot of opportunities to hold the workshops. Workshops are important. You guys in PolyU, at least in Dr. Huang's group, in Xinyan's group, you do so much AI. Like you've also recently had the Surefire workshop. So if you participate in that and you give a workshop on how to use this Surefire system that you're working on, or this part of Surefire, or how to apply AI in this particular area, because that's your research area, and hold a workshop, even with the SFPE Student Chapter, which is something you already have, that's fantastic. That counts towards your teaching. It's a chance for you to teach, and you'll find that you're terrible at it the first few times, but it's okay, because you're starting small, and you will develop as you go. So that's why it's important to gain this experience.
Okay, great. If anyone else has any further question, please just send Anwar a message or email, because we're gonna have to move to the next speaker. Hope everyone can understand. So our next speaker is also a PhD graduate from UQ and currently a postdoc research fellow at University of UQ, our Fire Research Group, Dr. Hons Wyn. He's gonna share some highlights of his PhD candidature, I hope.
Oh, I don't know actually.
Yes.
Well, I thank you for inviting me to speak. I'll be summarizing my journey, I guess, from how I got my current position. And I think it's a pretty interesting journey. So anyways, I want to give a little history on my education. So my background, as you can see, is mainly renewable energy. I got a bachelor's in renewable energy engineering in University of New South Wales in Sydney, and then a master's in process engineering, focusing on biofuels in Canterbury University, which is in the UK. And finally, my PhD is the topic of my PhD is fuel gas production via self-sustaining smoldering combustion of biomass, which is also a renewable energy topic here at UQ. So with such a which has an extensive background on renewable energy, how did I get into fire safety? So I guess from that, going into fire safety is also my entry into academia. And we've seen a few presentations today that focuses really gives you really good advice on this. And I feel that my experience in this is really cliche, and it's networking. And it is really cliche, and I don't want to, it's not as simple, just network and you will get into academia. I don't want to put all the credit into networking. Their life is complicated and there are many things that got me into where I am now. But I just want to focus a bit on networking, and I think it is a bit key into how I transitioned from renewable energy into fire safety. So my PhD, I did that at UQ. And I actually my supervisor actually focuses on smoldering combustion, and he's in the fire group. And that's my entry into the fire group. And even though I every day think about gasification. I think about syngas, fuel gas, biomass. I'm surrounded by fire. So in a weird way, without even really realizing it, I've developed a network full of fire people, fire students, fire PhD students, master student, fire academics, and also fire industry practitioners. So so in a way, without even intentionally doing it, I have developed this, I mean, I call it network, but back then I was focused on my thing. I didn't think I would even get into fire. They're just my friends. So I have a lot of friends in fire, in academia as well. So this image right here perfectly summarizes that analogy. I'm surrounded by fire. It also perfectly summarizes what happened in my PhD, which is I had a rough patch. So COVID happened around the 3rd year of my PhD. And around that time, I've done most of my experiments. I still have a handful to do. And because of that, of the closure of the lab, I spent a lot of time at home. And there's a lot of uncertainty, especially with the completion of the experiments and my PhD. And that caused a lot of self-doubt and low confidence. And that happens to people in COVID when they spend a lot of time at home. And of course, what happened? Networking. My friends in my network helped me go through the rough patch. Again, I don't want to give all the credit to networking or my network or my friends. My family also really helped. But yeah, they helped me go through, and I at one point near the end, when I'm nearing the completion of my PhD, I started thinking about a career. I mean, kind of late, but so I then realized that in my network that time, I don't know anyone in the renewable energy sector, in gasification, fuel, but I have a lot of friends in fire. So I started talking to some fire people. I talked to Sergio. These are like two main people that I talked to. I talked to Sergio, which is the current lab manager, and back then a research fellow, I think, about his life in the fire group, his work in the fire group, the fire lab. I then also sent an email to Hero, which was the fire lab manager at the time, and I expressed my interest. I said that, I think in the email I said, if there's anything, I'm very interested in working at the Fire Lab. And at the time, Hero emailed back saying something along the lines of, there's not much projects going on, but thank you for showing interest. And if there's anything coming up, I'll let you know. At that time, I thought that's a very non-interest email. So I'm like, all right, thank you. And I continued looking for work. But then something did come up at the Fire Lab, and they contacted me. We had a Zoom meeting with Sergio and David Lang, and then I started my transition back to the fire group. So that's what happened, and here I am now. So I started last year in 2023, and my job includes mainly consultancy projects. I also helped out in various PhD projects, and it was really weird, but I started having to give guidance and advice instead of asking for guidance, which is a really interesting transition. But I managed to, it worked as well. I still continue doing my inductions, getting more into fire safety, learning all the equipments, which is really interesting. And I finally got my thesis conferred. And this year I'm doing mainly the same thing, but the main difference is that I'm also a course coordinator for Fire 7640, which is the lab dynamics laboratory, where it's a practical course, so I feel really comfortable being in the lab. And in preparation for that, I also took teaching at UQ, and this is for academics at UQ who wants to add a bit of teaching in their career. And it's a week-long intensive program, and I highly recommend it for anyone who wants to pursue a bit of teaching in any pathway summarized by Anwar. But whichever pathway you want that includes teaching, this is highly recommended. So yeah, this is a really quick talk, I guess, for me to highlight that I built a network accidentally from full of fire academics. And if you know and are aware of what you adding to your network, you can kind of have a little bit more control in your career. So yeah, that's me. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to get questions.
Thanks, Hons,
Thank you.
for the highlights of your PhD. And we got a question from Josh. How
From
are you
Josh.
finding teaching? I know you just started, but what have you changed so far?
Oh, it's fun. I find I know that I don't really have that much professional teaching experience, but I have really enjoyed inducting people in the lab. And I think that's in a way teaching. And so what I've learned that through teaching through Zoom, because this course that I'm coordinating and also teaching is a fully external course. And oops. Yes, it's a fully external course. And I find that it's really hard to know if people are listening or not, because when you're teaching in person, you can see them nodding, see them looking at what you're gesturing at. So I think that was the thing that was surprising for me most. But I haven't really, for the course, I haven't changed much. I hope that I can coordinate this course at least twice, because so far this course, I do notice that there are, it used to be a practical course, but now it's transitioned to a fully external. So the lab practicals are more like virtual demonstrations. And the course is still designed, especially the assignments, were still designed as if you are in there. Like your task now is to measure the motion content of 5 pieces. So I think that is something that I want to change in the future, but I'm still learning. Awesome. So we have a question from Anwar. What advice would you give to PhD candidates having a hard time during their PhD due to work or personal reasons? Okay. Oh, imposter syndrome is insane. I think I like even now I still can't believe that I'm here, and the imposter syndrome is legit. The thing that helped me is that everyone also has imposter syndromes. I don't know if there's any true way for you to tackle it, but having also someone to talk to, someone close in that can relate to this feeling that you're having would help a lot. Like even if it's just one other person and talk to them. And yeah, that would be my advice for anyone dealing with imposter syndrome. And we have another question from chat, which is, do you think teaching is the extensive form of the networking you keep talking about? Extensive form of the networking. As in, is the question I developed the networking through teaching? Because I think in a way, yes. I remember going to a conference and recognizing, some people recognize me because I have taught them through some of the lab modules that I didn't know. And I think in a way that did expanded my network. Or my friends or colleagues. I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too. So again, you're free to send Hons email if you have any further question, or if you are studying something similar to biomass waste treatment or energy kind of stuff. Because like we know, it's not like pure fire safety engineering. So I guess some of you might have the same doubt, like, am I really a fire safety engineering research if you're doing something similar but not fully fitting into the fire safety engineering discipline? So thanks, Hons. Thanks for coming and thanks for the talk.
Thank you, Winston.
Yeah. So we're gonna move to the next, who is getting up very early and preparing very well for the talk. So let's welcome Dr. Zhuojun Nan, a PhD graduate from Hongkong PolyU, and currently a postdoc research fellow at TUDelft, Netherlands. She was awarded the SFPE Student Scholar in 2023. Are you there, Nan? Otherwise, I can keep talking about your glory history. I guess we couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I just opened my mic. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Okay, it's your stage.
Okay, thank you for inviting me for this fireside talk, and I'm glad to present a little bit and share my experience. And Anwar and Hons' talk is very good, and I'd like to also listen how they develop and share their experience. So first, I will briefly introduce myself a little bit, start from the education background. So for undergraduate, I'm working on civil engineering in China from the Guilin Technology University. And after that, I went to Edinburgh for structure and fire safety engineering program for master. And I met everyone, and everyone said, okay, we start doing fire a little bit from civil side to fire side by not by accident, it's like by coincidence. So because the fire area is not that big compared to the other like the civil part. That's why I feel like the program in UQ and also in University of Edinburgh, it's very helpful for civil engineering background students can start to getting familiar with about fire safety. And this area is, of course, essentially very important to the world and to everything. So that's also very good. After my study at Edinburgh, I graduate and I joined Arup, working in Shanghai office as a graduate fire engineer. Around 1.5 years, I was working in Arup and mainly doing performance-based structure fire design works for airports. For example, International Shaoshan International Terminal 4, and doing the performance-based design for the entire roof and also the key structure elements. But after work, I feel I still want to doing research and continue my study. And that's why I feel very lucky and I can join Xu Fire project as a Hong Kong Polytechnic University and supervised by Professor Asif Usmani mainly. And also I have a big group as my co-supervisors, Dr. Xinyan Huang, Dr. Li Mingjiang, and also Dr. Xu Dai. So during PhD study, my work is still focused on structure and fire, and I try to doing numerical simulation, fire test a little bit, and also try to introduce AI for structure fire safety. I feel a little bit like lost doing PhD because you need not only to think about, okay, I just finish one task and continue another task. In the last year, you also need to think, okay, how can I make all the work being a good story, working together? And your topics, sometimes you need to always change a little bit and adjust it a little bit. And it's always suffering doing a PhD. And there's like too much papers you care about, and you need to develop very different skills. For example, you need not only to good writing paper, you need to know how to communicate, present yourself very well, networking, learn a little bit about teaching. And I know the teaching opportunity in Hong Kong is not that much, at least compared to Netherlands and the UQ, as I know. And doing PhD, and like Anwar always make fun of me, I was attending every conference, and that's very important because you need to let people know who are you, and don't be shy to tell others what's your plan, because you will never know. Maybe someday your friends know one information, and knowing another position perfectly suit for you. You cannot know everything from the internet. There too much information, but you exactly told your friend, okay, I want to go to Australia, being a lecturer or being a fire engineer. If they are study at UQ or they are already working in UQ, they will let you know if there is any opportunity. So I guess it's very important to communicate with people, talk with people, and this part will also be very important. And now I'm being a postdoc researcher in the Delft University of Technology, and so this in Faculty of Civil Engineering, Department of Material Mechanics Management and Design, and in the section of Applied Mechanics. And I was working together with two groups. One is a computational mechanics, another is structural design and building engineering. So I got a quite not like unique position. So I was doing a postdoc researcher for 3 years, and for 1 year probation as assistant professor later, and then I got a chance to be a permanent doing research. And my research is focused on structure fire coupling using some advanced fire modeling, and also doing research with fire spreading behaviors, and also introduce AI for structure and fire safety. I will say it's very big change for me, because when I'm doing master, graduate, even just visiting the other university, I always like be involved in a big fire group. I'm very jealous now about UQ, UC, and also Hong Kong's, you guys working in the big fire team. You got fire lab, and you got a lot experts working on about the structure and the fire safety from the different side. But for me now in TUDelft, I'm the only one doing fire, and we don't have a fire lab. So it's a very different when you're working in a big fire group, and then you work independently in a big civil group, but you are the only one doing fire. I will say it has something good, and it also has something very tough. So if you are working in the big fire group, you always get help, but your research area, sometimes it's like quite overlapped, and the competition is quite intensive. If you are working independently in the civil group, and you are the only one doing a little bit about fire or mainly about fire, it's always easy to develop or collaborate with other guys. You got more opportunities, more research directions. For example, one of my colleagues doing kneading stuff, and which can burn kneading stuff easily, and they are doing advanced bio-based materials, and you burn it. So my new colleagues and always make fun of me when they are doing presentation, they present some research. My question is like always, can we burn it? It's like, can we find the opportunity to burn it, and let's test it? Let's consider about some fire safety issues. So that's the difference. You have a lot of opportunity, more free to doing research as an independent researcher. But it's also quite suffering. I will say being a postdoc, it's more task you need to do, and for me, it's like I'm also independently, I'm not working, follow the project, and I'm doing the faculty position. So I need to develop my own skill to found fundings and to try to writing proposals to get research funds and to try to establish a fire lab maybe in the TUDelft. So that's quite tough. The last thing is I want to share a little bit about the Delft Technology Fellowship, but sorry guys, this is only for female. Every year in the October, they will announce like 2 or 3 research direction from 6 faculties from TUDelft, and you can searching, and if you are getting 2 years postdoc researcher experience, you can apply for it. It's from the different levels. You can apply for the assistant professor, lecturer, or full professor, associate professor. And this program is trying to increase the rate of female scientists in every area. And I will see very big difference in the TUDelft. Almost the like old female females professors are male, but in the young generation, as a young researcher, we got like around half female and male researchers. So this will be a very good opportunity if like female still want to continue study at the continue working on academic, and like TUDelft really give good chance to help. And I think I don't prepare too much because I'm not have that too much experience even now doing teaching or like how to working in the big group. I will just say something very from the personal development side. So before I graduate, I already plan to found a position and continue on academic. So just before I submit my thesis, I already start to searching for postdoc position, and I applied around like 4 places. I will feel like as soon as you start to searching and you start to talking with people and finding the opportunities and doing the interview as early as you can and find the most suitable position whenever, whether you considering about salary or research, different research direction, or what kind of thing you want, and then you make the decision. It's very important. I will know a lot of students, you think, okay, the most important thing during PhD studies is I need to finish my thesis first. But then you will feel it feels a little bit too late. If you just finish and you start to searching, and you will feel very unsafe if you don't get another continued job. After you finish, it's quite depressed and suffering. I just can't imagine. And so start early and trying hard, and also being very confident because during the job interview, we will see for the final round, it's not really only relevant to research. It's more about like you have a good personality, you know how to promote yourself very well, and you show your skills. Those things being very important for your interview. And once you get a position, you will start to think about more and how you develop your own teams. It's a totally different question you need to think about immediately. So that's all. I hope all the students could get a very good opportunity to working on the research or industry. And I'm very glad to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Nan. We got a few questions for you already in the chat. So the first one is from Josh. Thanks, Nan. What is the greatest challenge from completing your PhD at Hong Kong, which is renowned for their fire research, to being a postdoc, which doesn't have a big fire problem? What advice would you give to someone in a similar position?
So I will say, yeah, we really lack of opportunity to doing teaching. And but the very good thing is like everyone said, okay, from the Hong Kong's group, everyone got a lot of publications. So the very tough thing is we still think like we are students. We just finish our task. We keep writing papers. We are not care too much to develop the other skills. So for example, doing like how to do a very quite interesting presentation, communicate skill, networking. This part feels a little bit lacking, and we need improve a little. This part very hard when we start to try to find a position. But the only good thing is we got a lot of publication, and I don't get too much, but my friends got a lot. So it's all also will be very competitive if you have apply for a similar position and you have 10 papers and the other one just got 3. So it's definitely adding some value, but everyone just have a very limited time. So you need to choose and make a very good balance.
Good. And good, you guys have a lot of publications. And the next question is from Yuxin Zhang. She said, you have several co-supervisors. Do you recommend this to young PhDs? What is a good point and challenges to have many co-supervisors?
So if you are being a student, when you're being a student and when you become a supervisor, you can think about the question very differently. When I was doing PhD, sometimes I really feel stressed. I have too much supervisors because not everyone is different. And they will give you very different suggestions and different because they have their own style, their own experience, and they always want to give you the best suggestion. Then suddenly you have too much suggestion, too much directions. And then you really need to decide by yourself how you want to doing research and how the work should be work in networking together or something like that. So you will feel, okay, if I just have one supervisor and I just follow the lead, that will be easy. But the good thing is, so if you just have one supervisor, very clear about what kind of things you need to do and you just follow, it feels easy and more effective. But if you have too much supervisor, you need to learn how to choosing the benefits and all the good suggestions really help to you and decide by yourself. And you need to spend more time to communicate with them, to learn from them. So that's also the thing.
We got a following question. What's the most interesting or impressive question you received during your interview, or your favorite answer you gave? Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I will say when I doing the interview for TUDelft, it's quite different style. Because if you are applying for job, it's like they more care about like your style, your personality. So the one question I remember very, very impressive is like they ask me, so if you have a very challenging day, you feel it's like extremely busy, you need to do a lot of work, But when you finish work, you go home, and during on the way, you just suddenly smiled. And why? It's like the thing I would never think about it, and I just give the answer. It's more like, okay, I really enjoyed my work, and I was like a little bit workaholic, so I'll give myself to-do list every day. And if today although it's a big list, I check every box. And after the work, and when on the way, when I'm back to home, and I was thinking, now I really finished my job very well today. And once I go home, I will have a nice beer, and then I will smile. And they really like this answer, and they said, oh, we all do the same. So that's why I was talking about when you're doing interview at the last minute, when they decide, okay, I want this candidate or not, sometimes not only about your research, it's also they want a like fun colleague.
What? I think the question was why you quit Arup and join academia.
Yeah.
So why you left industry?
Yeah, that feels a big choice for everyone. You consider about either working for industry or continue on academic. So I will say if you are working on industry, at the very beginning, you feel exciting because you're always working on landmark projects, and you will see the project like after a few years, and it's extremely expressive, and you will feel exciting. But the thing about working on industry is like you will just repeat your work. You don't really learn on getting new challenge after you getting familiar with everything. Although it's always new, very quite challenge projects, but the working daily routine is similar, and I feel it's a little bit boring, and I like to have some new challenges. But now I complain about a lot. It's like it feels every day you're working for academic, every day is new stuff, and that's too much challenges. So it's also another choice if you you want to do the more daily routine, make everything easier for life, but you always also will feel different because industry, you need working on bidding, you will be required more communicate, and also for career development is very different. So for my personally, I like challenges. That's why I quit the industry work and join the research again.
Okay, thanks, Nan, and thanks for sharing the valuable opportunities for female researchers. So if you have any further question or you want to build connection with Nan, please send her an email or find her on LinkedIn. Now we have our final speaker. He's also a friend of mine. Now he's still a PhD candidate, but he will graduate very soon. So basically at the end of the PhD candidature, he's David Morissette, a PhD candidate from the University of Edinburgh. And now he will be coming to UQ as a lecturer very soon.
Thanks so much, Juan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Let me just share my screen real quick. We'll get into it. Okay. So thanks for having me here today. There's been some interesting, great chat around sort of life advice and career advice on where to go, whether you're, and I think the spread of students here is primarily PhD students already, and for anyone who is probably more, at least research minded. And so I'd like to sort of just discuss some elements of my career trajectory, working in industry, doing my PhD, and particularly elements that I found helpful in sort of working in over the course of my PhD, what were some things that I found really helpful in terms of structuring the outcomes of my PhD itself, and sort of shaping the perspective of what did I actually want to get out of PhD, right? So just a little bit about my sort of career trajectory so far. I did an undergraduate and master's in mechanical and fire protection engineering in California, in Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And then after that, I worked in the fire protection engineering industry in the United States for a little while with both Jensen Hughes and Arup. And then I also did a short stint over with Red Fire Engineers in Melbourne, Australia. So I got some experience working both in the United States, looking at a very sort of the IBC sort of prescriptive structures. And I wanted to get some work experience working with performance-based design effectively, and a more looking more at performance solutions than just a pretty strict prescriptive code system. And so I worked in Australia for a little while. And then shortly after that, I started the PhD at the University of Edinburgh, which I'm just finishing up now. So that's been sort of my trajectory. I had a little bit of time in industry before the PhD. And that actually did really help sort of shape looking at what are some of the important questions to be asking in sort of the long term. What are the outcomes that we want to get out of these kinds of research projects? And then in terms of in the interim, something that is sort of between now and the future, I'm working part-time with UCL, looking at doing sort of a part-time postdoc down in London. And as Wen mentioned, by the end of this year, I'll be out at the University of Queensland as a lecturer. So I think in terms of advice of where to go, either for anyone who hasn't started a PhD yet or for anyone who's in the PhD right now, the questions come down to there's going to be lots of advice out there of, what's the best way to progress towards an academic route? What's the best way to progress towards whatever that you might want to do? But I think it's also really worth taking time just to reflect on what do you want to get out of your career, right? Because fire is a very uniquely positioned discipline where what we do is effectively critical for the operation of society and the built environment in particular, but not just the built environment, but also aircraft and everything in between. And so we really have a unique opportunity to really touch the lives of people in the world from the work that we do, right? So there are many amazing things you can do in industry to be at the cutting edge, leading the way in terms of developing new safety standards and new safety guidance for whether it's timber buildings or novel materials that are coming out, and that's a very rewarding pathway, right? But a lot of times in the PhD, a lot of what we're focusing on is what's the next academic step, what's the next postdoc, after that, what's the next position, when do I get a faculty position, and that doesn't need to be the progression, right? There are, I think, many people that would be extremely satisfied, and not only satisfied, but do good things for this world to go from the PhD to go to industry, right? And there's a lot of really good people who will be able to continue from their academic career on to becoming permanent staff at a university, and then continue this tradition of teaching and research. So all these things are great things, but I think it's really important. I think the best advice I was ever given was really reflect on what do I want to get out of my career, and instead of the question being like, what's the next step for you? Like, what do you want to do a postdoc, right? It all comes down to what are the things that you want to get out of this in the long run, and how do we build towards that? And there's no clear answer for that. I mean, I think it sounds very easy to be like, oh yes, just figure out what you want to do with your life. But we have mentors around us to help us along the way. But I think it is really important it's very easy to lose sight of the big question and just focus on what's the next step. But I think it's just really important to sort of keep that in the back of your mind. But so there's been some good discussion already. I know I got, Hons was talking about teaching a little bit, and I know Nan was talking about a breadth of teaching and research and other aspects. I'm going to focus on just a couple individual aspects, primarily how to steer research, and what are sort of the interesting questions to look into there. And I'll briefly touch on a little bit of networking elements, but then I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But in terms of the thing that I think, looking back on what I did over the course of my PhD, the things that I'm very sort of happy with in terms of the work that I've done is that I'm very happy with the breadth over which I've sort of investigated. And I think this is something that's a nice sort of model to keep in mind, whether you're just, whether you're about to start a PhD or whether you're finishing, thinking about where should I go with my research. I think in this field of fire safety, we have a very unique opportunity, like I said, to really touch the fabric of developing safety for the world. So I think it's really important to not only stay involved in everything from fundamental research of things like being involved in the Combustion Institute and understanding, can we do measurements of flame structures and understanding the minutia of the problem, which is very important for understanding physical insight, right? But that physical insight needs to then be fundamentally linked back to the idea of, can we then start building up towards engineering applications, right? So the kinds of projects that I've been involved in over the course of my PhD have been anything from, using laser diagnostics to look at flame structures and, chemical species of flames, slowly scaling up to more, technical things of applying that to things like, fire safety of smoldering timber, and then all the way up to the scales of what happens if we're burning upholstered furniture, right? And then all the way up to the scales of running, full-scale timber compartment tests, right? But I think many times you see research siloed in this way, where I'm not a, let's say I'm a timber compartment person, therefore I can never be doing, combustion measurements on flame structure, right? Or that, I'm a combustion diagnostics person, I can never be doing timber compartment fires, right? But the reality is the knowledge you get from that, if you're in this world of research, they all scale. Your understanding of highly complex, large-scale testing comes from your understanding of the fundamentals. The fundamental structure of a flame doesn't change necessarily, right? And so if you can understand these things across scales, then the insight you gain in terms of the practical engineering outputs are astronomically larger, right? So being able to sort of understand what is the breadth of my research and having very targeted advances across different scales and complexity, but not being afraid to really it takes time to go back and link what are the fundamentals that I learned from this problem. And before, just like, if we could we do these cool experiments, we can write the paper, we can publish it. And then, but what does it mean in the context of more complex things, right? How do I link my research on, flame spread over fuels to fire growth, fire development, flashover, all of these things? So they are all intimately linked, right? And part of doing research in fire safety is sort of taking a step back and looking at how do all these links come together, and what can we do to then make the world a safer place? As it sounds a bit cheesy as is, but all of these things build up in that way. And I think it's really important to sort of take a look and really keep an idea of that breadth. Just a little bit of I use a geography of the places that I've worked, but I've worked in the US, and I've done my PhD in the UK, and I worked in Australia, and I've also collaborated with both the University of Sydney and previously with UQ, and now I'm very excited to be able to join the faculty there. I'm really looking forward to it. But one thing that I think was really helpful over the course of my PhD was knowing that in addition to these places where I've actually spent time working, I could probably just throw 20 random darts across the world right now, and I'd land pretty close to somebody that I actively speak with across the world. We have a fire industry is a pretty tight-knit community, right? And developing this network across the world, there are, anywhere you go, there will be people that are doing interesting fire research that are worth keeping in contact with and bouncing ideas off. And so I found it really satisfying to to be able to travel to a random city, and odds are I actually happen to have a contact there who maybe we can go grab a coffee and discuss what kind of things are they working on, right? Now, one thing that I'll sort of, I added this slide in this last minute as I was watching some of the previous presentations, because I think it's really interesting to emphasize in the context of things that I found really helpful for my research is there's a lot of pressure in academia for metrics of publishing research, which I think is truly our best mode of communication. Maybe not the best, but is an important mode of communication, because we need to publish our research. We need to figure, it needs to be out there, and we need to be able to then build on this body of literature. But I think what's also really important is being able to stand in front of an audience and discuss it, right? I think the most valuable information I've ever gained from my PhD experience was getting in front of an audience, presenting something that I thought was really good, and then getting torn apart by the old guard, or getting comments from the audience and having these discussions. And then all of a sudden you leave with so much more insight, right? So something I would encourage anyone in the world of research is, I've been very proud over the course of my PhD of having conference presentations I've been able to do and places I've been able to go to, not only is it a great opportunity for networking, but it is really important to really be engaged in this community. Like, we all need to be able to stand in front of one another and see, does our research actually make sense in light of one another's work? And I think it's really important to have that discussion, because at the end of the day, we need to be working together as a community and, you know, polishing these ideas off one another. So I think some PhD students can fall in a trap of only going to a few conferences, or you know, not necessarily making the most of certain conferences. And I've seen that, and I totally understand that in the same way. But not only is it a good opportunity to network, but I think it is a critical aspect of, if you want to be involved in the world of research, to be able to have these discussions and you know, be able to basically challenge one another and see, you know, to what level, what's the highest standard that we can hold the research of our discipline to. And so having that engagement, I think, is really critical. And I think that's something that I would absolutely recommend that people keep sort of on top of their list if they're thinking about things or what they can do with the remaining time in research, and how do you build up not only, you know, CV lines and things that are important, and metrics that are, let's be real, are important for us progressing in our career. But also you get, you know, in terms of the value per CV line, right? I think conferences are really high up there, because you get that engagement. You get you get to brush shoulders with the greats of our industry, and the people who are writing the textbooks that we're now reading, you know, are still attending these conferences. It's something that we have a distinct privilege in, being involved in a discipline that is, you know, functionally not that old, in terms of some of these people that are really fundamental to the development of this discipline are still attending these conferences actively, and you can engage with them. So, I mean, that's just one thing to emphasize sort of within research, but and that's all I have. Yeah, that's all I have to discuss in detail. But I do want to sort of reemphasize the fact that wherever you are in your career, right, just make sure you're spending time thinking about the big question. Think about, like, what is it that you want to get out of this career, right? Because FIRE is uniquely positioned to do a lot of good for this world, and a lot of fun, you know, interesting, compelling, scientifically thought-provoking research, and also very satisfying, you know, engineering work, right? But at the end of the day, navigating what are the next steps for you always comes down to, what are the elements that is going to make you, what are the things that excite you, right? And there doesn't need to be a formula for that, and that's the hard part. But make sure you take the time to sort of reflect on that and understand, you know, what are the things that you're going to get enjoyment out of. And so I think that's just sort of an important thing to keep in mind. Anyway, but yeah, no, I'm excited to take any questions.
Well, David, we already have a lot of questions here, and I also had a question left from an audience who had to leave earlier, but we can address this one by one, all right? So the first one is from Yuxin Zhang. Hi, David, what is the main difference of a postdoc and a lecturer in your expectation?
So I'll take a stab at this, and I'll see if I don't answer your question, feel free to rephrase it. But in terms of the main difference, in terms of what I would view like the position as, is a postdoc is an opportunity to continue as a focused researcher, right? So you now have the skill set of the point of the PhD is not necessarily all of your outputs necessarily, but it's to become a doctor. It's not about the doctorate, it's about the doctor. It's about becoming someone who can synthesize research, develop research projects, and execute on those kinds of things. And I think the postdoc is an opportunity for then you now that you have those skills, to then just rock and roll and continue doing research and be able to produce outputs and actually develop those new research outputs. And I think the lecturer positions generally are you're more geared towards, while you can still continue to, you know, to sort of have a hand in the research activities, you're now sort of moving into a position that is about group dynamics and making sure that your skills are facilitating your research group, and making sure that if there's students involved, that you can help and supervise students, and you know, offer your skills there. It becomes much more about fostering the greater activities of the group, which is also extremely exciting. I think it's a very cool opportunity that I think everyone kind of strives for. But it really depends on what you want to get out of your next step, right? Do you want to be the one pulling the trigger in the lab every day, doing, you know, experiments for 2 years? You probably might not get that as a lecturer. You might, depends on the scenario, but I know there's a lot of scenarios in which that will be a little bit harder than if you were a postdoc, for example. But not to say you can't do that as a lecturer. But this, I think it's the ethos behind it's a little different. But I could be wrong.
Well, we can move to the next question. It's from Josh. Thanks, David. You seem to have an interesting industry experience before starting your PhD. What is similar to what Josh had? What lessons from industry helped you most while doing your PhD?
No, that's a great question, Josh. And I think having a little bit of experience in the industry really helped me sort of focus on, at the end of the day, what are the big questions that research activities are trying to ask. So it's really easy to look at fire research as like on one. I showed that spectrum of research, right? And you could say like over here we have the combustion people, right? And they're doing their thing, and over here we have the compartment people doing their thing, right? And I think what industry helped me do is when I was doing the fundamental stuff, I always kept an eye on, okay, well, the reason this fundamental stuff is important is because it has implications to the stuff I can draw the line between what I was doing there and what I was doing when I was working as an engineer. And with that, and I think that context is really important. Otherwise, we end up with these siloed ideas of the people who do the fundamentals need to be separate from the people who do the practical, which I think is a huge mistake. Because otherwise, you don't end up with any insight. If you have too much practical insight, no fundamental insight, you don't know anything. And if you have too much fundamental insight and no practical insight, then you know a lot with no application. So I think my industry experience helped me sort of make that link between the two.
And a question from Wilson. Thanks for your presentation. I want to work in the industry after my PhD graduation. Okay, very clear objective.
Nice.
Since I like engineering applications, you have worked in 3 fire safety companies. Which of these companies did you enjoy the most? What is the difference between these 3 companies?
It's a wonderful question. I think that's a really wise question to be asking too, and looking into different companies. So I think the experiences are going to change from location to location, right? So I know that there's certain trends that remain along, like, Arup, for example, will be pretty consistent in different places around the world. Certain companies might not be as consistent. But I think a couple of questions to think about are, what is the kind of environment that you want to work in? So like across the 3 companies I've worked for, they all varied in size of not only the individual offices, but in terms of the corporation. So I worked for a very small company of what at the time was like 40 engineers, if that. And then I worked for larger companies that had hundreds of offices and thousands of engineers. And so I think if you can ever work out a way where you can take a term contract and just try a job for 6 months and be like, hey, do you mind if I take a term contract or blah blah blah. Sometimes you can negotiate that and just try out different companies. And if you can, I know as a PhD student, it's a bit trickier. Earlier in your career, you can try doing internships and things like that. But if you can ever sort of get an idea of, do you like to work in an environment that is a very large organization where you have a wide network of people, where you have offices in Dubai and London and Ontario or whatever, and you can go and you can visit their offices, or you can work on a wide breadth of projects? Or do you prefer to be in a company where the people that own the company and you go out to dinner with them on Friday night? And there are benefits to both, because you get a certain level of responsibility very early on as a small company. We don't necessarily always get that at a larger company. So I think that's actually a critical thing that people don't necessarily always think about. I think that was sort of the most eye-opening thing from my experience. But another important thing is to think about the people that are on the team that you're working with. And so to the extent that you can, talk to people who you're going to work with. And so do you gel with them? Do they share your same views on design and things that you're passionate about? How they should feel about your research? Things like that, I think, are questions to sort of keep in mind. But there's no right or wrong way to approach it. But try to get as much information as you can ahead of time, I guess.
Cool. I had a question from our audience who had to leave early, and he said he will check back on the YouTube recording later. And just a reminder, we have a YouTube channel. So if you really like this session and you would like to forward to your colleagues or friends, you can follow or just check our YouTube channel for the recording. The recording will be uploaded maybe in 2 days, so you can see it next Monday. But anyway, the question was, David, you have done a lot of research work in flame spread, which obviously a complex problem. Do you think you will dig even deeper in your future research path, or you will consider more about diversity when you start working in a new university?
Question. Well, I think, again, the advice that I was given on this kind of approach is that your core topics stay with you, right? On one level, when you start a PhD, it does not define who you are, right? You can finish your PhD and you can go off to be, you know, a completely different research space. But at the same time, you've spent so much time becoming, you know, so deeply entrenched in a certain topic where, you know, by the end of it, you at least have the choice where you say it's the sort of marginal amount of input to continue that research is not as high as starting, you know, for me to go start doing, I don't know, actually come thinking of dabbled in a lot of things. It's hard to find something like, I don't know, wildfire management, right? I have no idea about that, right? But at the same time, yes, I think the short of it is yes, I think I will continue doing flame spread research, but at the same time, the point of sort of moving on in your career is not to just have one element going for you. I'm really excited to grow to different research paths and look at different topics and, you know, sort of expand my repertoire as much as I can. Because the whole point of doing the PhD again is to figure out what are the skills you need to do the research, and then afterwards we can shape that to whatever topics that we feel are, you know, needed. And so you don't need to stick with it, but yes, absolutely, I love the flame spread problem in particular. It's a complex, very fascinating problem that has a lot of good work left to be done. So I absolutely intend to keep working on it.
So do you think it's more like research interest driven or project driven when you are starting a position in academia?
So I think the reality is you need to have projects that you can support, right? So you need to have project funding to support students and support things like that. So I mean, I think that there's always going to be a bit of both, because you need to be able to, you know, create the structure by which you can then support research activities. But at the same time, if you keep these, especially these fundamental topics, right? If you look at the, you know, what are your core flammability topics of like burning rates, flame spread, ignition, you know, compartment fire dynamics, all of those things always overlay very nicely on top of basically any applied topic, right? So even if you choose to investigate a specific applied topic, it's very easy to then always kind of come back to the fundamentals and be able to, if you have these, especially these fundamental topics that you're interested in investigating, it's always very easy to be able to keep an eye out for those and then pinpoint what are the relevant physics that we get out of any experiment that relate back to those fundamentals.
Okay, cool. Since there's no more question, I think that's the end of the session from our invited speakers. Actually, we have arranged another discussion session for the students, but I never thought the audience would be this active for the questions and everything. So I would really appreciate like everyone who participated, whoever asked questions or who gave the speaks, and it's encouraged to send emails to the speakers if you have further questions, or check our YouTube channel for the recording. So I know this is almost to the end, and I started a poll to ask if you are still available to join the discussion room. But if there are not many people who are still available for the later session, I think we're gonna close this session and we can make another talks just aiming for the students in the near future to talk about research and build connections, if that sounds right to everyone. Yeah, good, because yeah, this is running late. We better do it in a right format instead of rushing it. So I think we're gonna,
yeah, and considering it's pretty late in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I understand. In your region, it's already 6 p.m. I think.
Yes,
it's
and
all
it's
right.
Friday night.
There's people up early, so I'm fine.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for all the great presentations. Thanks for all the valuable experiences, either in industry or academia. I think we're gonna call off the day, and we're gonna send an invitation soon for another discussion just for the students. So please be prepared to introduce yourself in a very short format and exchange some ideas in your PhD candidature. Thanks everyone. I think that's the end of the session. If you have any more questions, please ask email or just send to the speakers if you have very specific one.
Yeah, and the name of our YouTube channel is SFPE UQ Student Chapters, and you can not only watch the recording for today, you can watch all the recording, all the seminar we had previously, like for many years. Like, yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'll stop recording. And you are free to leave at any point.